Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Your magical kiss, take me just so far. Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Don't leave me like this, dangling from a star. Set me all aflame, and it's so pleasing. It sure would be a shame if you were only teasing. So, my love, before I go, turn the lights way down low and talk to me. Talk to me, talk to me. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this edition of the Donald P. McKeag Show. We're on, Ken Bukes and I, every Thursday. Well, not every Thursday, but most every Thursday we try to be, from 6 to 7. I am also on the radio on Cape Cod every Saturday from 11 to 1. And that is WXTK 95.1 FM. This is a conservative talk show, but I am a former JFK Democrat, voted Republican for defensive purposes for many years, now consider myself pretty much independent of politicians and, quite frankly, disdainful of politicians. We have our telephone number up on the screen. We are a call-in show, should you care to. But should you not, what I try to do is to educate, get you fired up a little, get you thinking. Most of all, I'm here to try very hard to help the disaster that our wonderful country is in and is facing worse. We've got a new election coming up. Last night were debates. I was fortunate to be on Talk of the Town with Karen Bukes, and Kenny was at the controls last night also. So I did not get much of the debate. I watched it at home, but then, of course, nowadays you watch the replays. What I did watch, I didn't watch very long because I just really have disdain for politicians in general. And now, I become so frustrated with Donald Trump and with the other candidates in responding to Donald Trump that I finally had to shut it off. Donald Trump is saying the things that have been needed to be said for several years. I mean, in the double digits. And his problem is that he can't get the message. I want to wring his neck because he negates the good that he's doing in terms of waking up people. He's getting people excited, both parties. And the reason is because of what he's saying. He is attacking this establishment, this failing government that we've had for years and years, both parties, who look out to get reelected, who make concession after concession after concession, who are bought and paid for not only by corporate America, but by unions and by the media. And how do you defeat it? The only way you can get a crack in this whole situation is Donald Trump has shown the only way, and that is to have someone with the gumption to tell the truth and who doesn't need the money. And what concerns me is I don't think he cares one way or the other about becoming president. I think, like every one of us would be, he is surprised by the huge response he's getting. And it perhaps, with all his bravado, is scaring him a little bit. The magnitude, he's not a politician, which is a positive on the one hand, but he's not a politician either, so he doesn't really fit. And he understands what it would take to get Congress to move. He understands that unless it's a Democrat, and unless it's Obama as a Democrat, where Congress just shrivels up and lets Obama do whatever he chooses, if it would be a Republican and not a politically correct candidate, like black or female or gay, where they all just fall and lose any kind of objectivity, this is what Trump is showing. We are fed up. All parties, all races, too, by the way. Trump has had a tremendous turnout of Hispanics, who, by the way, you'd never know it in today's America, but they outnumber the black population. But there are also a lot of hard-working blacks who are fed up, too. Blacks who didn't believe in affirmative action and saw the dangers of it that we're all now paying for. But if he could just stop with the biting foolishness against the other candidates, if he could stop with the facial expressions, he'd walk into the White House. That's why I'm saying, I keep saying it on my radio show, I just believe that it's going to do some good, but I'm afraid we're going to end up with no change at all. And if you watch those, talk is cheap. Remember those adages? How people continue to believe politicians, I'll never know. They're pointed out. Every one of those people on the dais, with the exception probably of Ben Carson and maybe Trump, and they've all been caught in lies. They've all been, by lies, meaning they have said one thing when they were running for re-election or for initial election. They've got elected and then gone totally against what they promised the population, and we can't get rid of them, like this president. And the big thing that is a situation that has got to be addressed, the strongest thing that Donald Trump is doing is the cancer that is really the destructive force of this great United States, and it's illegal immigration. Make no bones about it. It has and is affecting every single other facet of this country. It isn't wars. It isn't legal immigrants. It is illegal, out-of-control immigration that is pushed by the leftists in the Democratic Party and pushed by the Democratic leadership, who have been kidnapped by those who would see America fall. Oh, they'll never admit to it, but you listen to them and watch their voting record. Just watch them. You watch this Bernie Sanders. If you listen to him, he is a lunatic. And you Democrats, after Hillary, who's an absolute, was defined 15 years ago when she and her husband were in the White House, the two of them were called by William Safire, a highly thought of columnist for the New York Times. He referred to them as pathological liars. Do you want that in the White House? Just because she's a woman? Just because she's married to Bill Clinton? I listen to people who honestly think they want to vote for her because then Bill will be there to be president with her. What a load. Those two don't get along. They haven't. I knew people that were in the White House during the Clinton years. I wish I could tell you. Her language was inappropriate. like a truck driver. She called her husband everything in front of the Secret Service men. But a Democrat doesn't seem to care today. You know, as long as it's a Democrat, we're going to vote. And that's what's bringing us down. But Trump is opening up the eyes of so many who have been captured by political correctness. I saw it coming when I was school teaching back in the late 70s. It's not about doing the right thing anymore. It's about, and it always will be with liberalism. Liberals aren't the nice, wonderful people they kind of portray themselves in. They are control freaks. I've been around them. I've never been one. I was a conservative Democrat that believed in John F. Kennedy's philosophies, one of which that is a total misnomer for the Democratic Party now, and that was, don't ask what your country will do for you. What will you do for your country? I'm paraphrasing it. They're the total opposite now. That's why I left the Democratic Party. The minority position rules today in a country whose Constitution talks and states the majority shall rule. And you Democrats go right lockstep. Because unfortunately, this country has become victim also to the 7 deadly sins, which never get talked about. Schools don't deal with them. Unions don't deal with them. Management doesn't deal with them in corporate America. Greed, sloth. You have one person who has the nerve to say, I said it to a high Democrat friend of mine. I said, do you honestly think everyone wants to work, that everyone wants a job? And I'm not talking about the people who are just generationally unemployable. I'm talking about very nice people who would much rather sit in their backyard and collect. That by the millions we've got them in this country. Why? Thanks to the feel-gooders, the feel-good liberals who spend your money, my money, not their own. I suppose you can say, well, they pay taxes. No. These are the limousine liberals that we talked about in the 60s. You know, the Paul Newmans and then all of the ones that we had represented us, Paul Tsongas. And these are the people who love to spend other people's money. If you remember, Maggie Thatcher, I believe she coined it, but she may have gotten it through history, because socialism, which is what the Democratic Party is, and has made this country. We are more socialist now than we are capitalist. And socialism has never lasted. I'm a former educator. Look it up. You don't hear it, though, in the schools. Why? Because they're part of socialism. Government employees are choking the system. Sorry, I was one. Now there is no bottom line. The private sector, they have a bottom line. When they give raises, they have to have a surplus at the end of the fiscal year so that they can then distribute it. Now, I understand there's greed in big greed in the private sector. I'm not sticking up for corporate America. But when you have the public, John Adams, the second president of the United States, warned us of this. When the public, and so did Thomas Jefferson, when the public employee, basically, when the public knows they now can dictate through unions, they didn't spell it out that way, they can dictate their wage regardless of the availability of funds, you're on the way out. That's why Thomas Jefferson said if you get 200 years out of a democracy, you're fortunate. We don't even have politicians that care about history anymore. They're so self-centered, both parties. They think about them. Now, does that mean there aren't people who try to do good? Sure, some of them do. But when it bottom line comes, when you when you take your own personal values and you subjugate them to a political philosophy, you're no longer any good. I don't care what you do. And that's what the political system has always been. I watched the other night the James Stewart. I always love to watch it because it just shows that I get so upset for the future, for my kids, for your kids, for grandkids. The future bodes poorly. Back again to illegal immigrants. They are chewing up billions and billions of dollars in free health care, never mind jobs. Do you know only 2% of the illegal immigrants that sneak into California and Arizona, only 2%, this is proven, work in the fruit trees and all the things that the liberals in the newspapers say, oh, this is why, those wealthy, those evil, wealthy fruit growers, they want illegals here for cheap labor. Now, I'm not saying there aren't some, but there's only 2% of the total. They end up living off of us, living off liberal socialist programs that hand out your kids' money, yours, and your kids, and your grandkids, if there's any left. Massachusetts, do you know how many retirement funds right now in the public sector are underfunded and in some cases non-funded? Try to research it and you'll find it. They have been robbing Peter to pay Paul in so many states until finally, like we see Illinois, we see California. Do you know how many billions of dollars is out there just in Hollywood alone? And we are bailing California out. California is bigger than some of the world's countries, their budget. And they can't stay fiscally strong, run by Democrats. Illinois, run by Democrats. Go right down the line in every state that's in trouble. Every single one of them is run by Democrats. Why? Because they buy votes by handing money out they don't have. Trump has hit that chord. And people are fed up with the whining of liberals about we're not kind enough. We're not fair. We're all immigrants. Yeah, I'm first generation. My father came over here with my grandmother when he was 4 years old, and my aunt was 3. And I keep saying this because I want it pounded in that those of you watching me, I want you to be able to tell your kids and your grandkids, whether they want to hear it or not. When my family came in here, like everyone else that came in here legally, they had to pass a physical, they had to have a job, they had to have a place to live, and they had to have a sponsor. And that sponsor was responsible for their behavior and for what they did in America. And they also had to conform to English. Oh, no, not liberals. Oh, that's not fair. The Democratic Party pulled a fast one. And then what do in the press? They blame the wealthy Republicans. Now, of course, we all know there's no wealthy Democrats that would ever hire illegal immigrants. It's laughable. Who was it that, I think Bill Clinton or Hillary, somebody, they named a couple of judges, or Carter or somebody, and they couldn't get confirmed. One was a female. Of course, they were politically correct. Of course, they have to be female or black or gay. That's what we've become now. And I'm not a racist. I'm not homophobic. I'm not threatened by anyone. I like anyone. They got the credentials, fine. But I'm not going to be a doormat. I'm not going to see persons that have worked, sergeants and lieutenants in the police departments and in the fire departments, taken the civil service exams and stepped over by someone that gets 35 or 40 points less because they're black or a female or they're gay. That's political correctness run amok, and that's what we've had in this country. And that's why it isn't just illegals. It is a hidden, upset society. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives that have a brain that are fed up to hear. And that is going to kill us. And that's why I speak about it. And I'm not here to be liked. Ronald Reagan once said, it's nice to be liked. It's far more important to be respected. It's time politicians get back to that. Look at Trump now. He's got thousands and thousands of people following him. Why? None of them, like me, we're not fools. I just pointed out his flaws, how you cringe sometimes, and you say, why did you have to say that? But he's also saying things and going after these phonies that are running for president, running for re-election, and allowing the status quo. These Republicans have been a disgrace because they do not give the American people an option anymore. They try to be like Democrats because they think that's how they'll get elected. And every now and then one of them is. They have no courage. They have no convictions. And again, I'm painting them all with the same brush, but I'll tell you, there are very few that don't fall into it. And I ran for state representative in the year 2000 as a Republican. I lived in Hyannisport. I was friendly with Ted Kennedy, very friendly. Loved the man, period. As a person. Politically, I disagreed a lot of times and told him so. He's a wonderful man. He meant well, but again, this was another flawed thinking, and this goes back to the times of the Founding Fathers. Just because someone has a lot of money doesn't mean they're going to be a good politician. This flawed idea is if somebody's got a lot of money, then they're going to watch out for your money. No. This is the Bushes. The rest of them. This isn't just Democrats. The Rockefellers. They get in office, they spend like crazy. Tell me the last time we ever had, and I'll answer you because he was a friend of mine. When's the last time you ever remember a politician of either party, male, female, black, Chinese, I don't care what, gay, straight, two heads, one? When have you ever heard, in my lifetime I haven't heard, that someone said, never mind the spending, we're going to start watching how we spend. We're going to start rewarding people who save their town, their state, and their country money, who look at the budget, who don't come in like I went to my school when I was school teaching in the late 70s. The department head calls us in. I was an English teacher and a football and baseball coach. Proud of it. Loved it. Loved teaching. Loved the kids. It's a great job. Shouldn't be making $80,000 and $90,000 teaching school. Period. Teachers don't like it? Tough. We used to have a job in the summer. Why? Because we had a lot of time off. We also had every weekend to be home with our kids when the working stiffs out there had to get babysitters and everything else. On a day that it snows, the teachers roll over and stay in bed. I don't fault it. That's part of the job. But it was also part of the benefits. You get very fine health care, and you get it year-round, even though there's 10 weeks in the summer when you're off. All of us worked at another job unless we chose not to. Now they choose not to because they're making plenty of money. That's what the teachers' unions did, and that's why your property taxes are ridiculous. How's that? They are ridiculous. When 70% of a town's property tax goes to schools and you tolerate it, you are part of the problem. Your parents wouldn't. Well, I'm talking to probably people my age. My father, my word. Your father, there'd have been an uprising to think that an institution that's run 180 days, weekends off, holidays off, bad weather off, and look at our test scores nationwide. Depending upon what poll you look at, we're between 17th and 20th in the world. Yet we spend 5 and 6 times more per student than they do, other countries. But we tolerate it. Why? Teachers' unions and the greed of public employees. Sorry, that's the way it is. And let's look at what's happening now with the police department, with illegal immigration, and with inner city crime. How do you police officers feel about having to justify your existence and your actions every single day against common criminals? Yet you do, thanks to the media, thanks to liberals, thanks to the ACLU. But you say nothing? I guess last year or whenever, when the Boston police got a 25% raise, which is outrageous. And don't hand me this, wouldn't want to be a police officer, and I admire police officers very much. But again, there has to be a bottom line mentality once in a while. We are broke as a country because every person gets more than they're worth, and that's in the private sector too. But the private sector, again, has to have a bottom line, or they have to shut the doors. That's why socialism ultimately fails. That's what happened in Russia. That's what's happened in Italy. That's what happened in France. France has got more days off, I believe, than any other country. And they have no real economy. They go day to day. They've been a weak country for years and years. We saved them in World War II. We've had to put up with so many things. Donald Trump, the only one that said the truth. Why should we go and fight for foreign countries and not send them a bill? Contrarily, we go and we support Iran against Iraq, Saudi Arabia against Iraq. Do we send them a bill? No way. Do we get some of the expense that we, the taxpayers, have paid? Do we get it back in oil? No. Contrarily, George Bush, H.W. Bush, forgave them the debt. How do you, never mind the loss of human American lives, our young men and women being killed in a foreign land, protecting them, come back maimed, all the wounded veterans, the sad ones you see on the screen that I send money to, and I know a lot of you do, and their lives aren't worth something. We give foreign countries who hate us, we send them money year after year, millions and millions of dollars, when we have people who don't have jobs here. We have people who are losing their homes still. We have banks who give illegals because the politicians make it so. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, failed just because of that liberal up in Boston, Barney Frank, and his boyfriend, who fell right into that loans to people who could not afford to even pay rent. They gave them loans to buy a house. Now, how do you do that, ladies and gentlemen? Forget your Democrat, Republican, independent. How do you do it? How do you get around the common sense knowledge that if someone can't afford to pay their rent, then let's give them a mortgage? Only one way. It was affirmative action, and we still pick up the tab for people who have mortgages, who can't afford them, and who don't have jobs, but they have a house. It's insane. Total insanity. And those debates, to me, are laughable because illegal immigration should be demanded of those candidates. An attack and a stopping of it. Stop this foolish, media-driven, feel-good mentality that we're somehow being unkind. Have you heard Obama now? Here we've got all this problem. They're going to let 5 million illegals more into this country. That's Democrats. You don't care, I guess, because, you got a waterfront home in Plymouth, I guess? I don't know. You don't say a word. But anyway, Ted Cruz that spoke last night, I think he's got a lot on the ball, but he's, again, a politician. And I forget the 2 items that he backtracked on, supported Obama when he said he wasn't. But he wrote an article, and I'm waiting for one person to bring it up. Very intelligent and very true. One of the problems we have, and it's ironic because the Democrats, for years, back to Reagan, they wanted to end the Electoral College. But now, thanks to illegals voting, which is another wonderful thing by you people out there who don't think people should have to show an ID to vote. It's laughable. You can't fix stupid. And we're loaded with stupid people in this country, just like Trump says, that are running towns like Plymouth and Carver and Barnstable and Weymouth, where I'm from, and they're mostly Democrats who can't see the forest through the trees. Now they love the Electoral College, and this is where Ted Cruz's article over a year ago in the New Yorker, a liberal magazine, and he said something so profound and so frightening. He's from Texas. Texas has 36 electoral votes. He said, if Texas goes blue, notice even the way the press and the red is Republican. In other words, we're angry, us conservatives, all we can talk about is hate. McKeag, all he can talk about is hurting illegal immigrants. They never call them illegal, by the way. Isn't it convenient? I love these liberal phonies. I'd love to see Bob Kraft and John Henry with the Red Sox. I'd love to see what would happen. And some of you who have season's tickets to the Patriots, how'd you like to go into Gillette and go in and your seats are taken, you and your wife and your kids, your seats are taken by some Mexicans or some Brazilians or whatever. They don't have tickets. I suppose you'd just say, oh, that's okay, and go home. Yeah. Well, it's just that simple. It's just like Tip O'Neill once said, all politics is local. What happens in the small arena is what happens in the big arena eventually. You wouldn't see anybody without a ticket, especially in the private boxes of the owners. They would no more be able to get into a stadium or an arena than the man in the moon, nor should they. But it's okay to have them flow by the millions now into this country. We're not talking about those like my family and some of you watching, whose families came in here, stood at the island and stood in Boston Harbor, filled out the papers, passed the physical, had a sponsor, had a job, wanted to speak English. It's not rocket science, ladies and gentlemen. It is scary. Ted Cruz said, if Texas goes blue, there will never be another Republican president. How's that? No one has picked up on that. I have that article somewhere. that would shift. Texas has always been red. It stayed Republican. Just think if the Democrats know that they can never be defeated. Think of what this country, I don't care if it's you that are Democrat. That's what's wrong with our state, you know. Spendthrift, liberal, broke. You reelected Michael Dukakis after he put us in the tank with a 0 bond record. And not only did you reelect him in Massachusetts when he brought us down again, you then made him your presidential candidate. That's how much you care about austerity, about being responsible. This is what I'm driving at. When's the last time you've ever heard anyone run for office and say, I want to see people more responsible for how we spend the money of the taxpayer? When's the last time? Why? That's what the Yankees used to do. We build schools, for crying out loud, for 180 days a year, $90 million, $107 million. Oh, it's all about the kids. Are you kidding? You build police stations. They have their own private gym. They have everybody else that works. The company might buy them, a membership, and then they give them raises. Spend $90 million building a new school, and then the teachers' union gets raises. And a guy like me is mean. I'm mean-spirited, you see. I taught school. My wife taught school. We didn't make a lot of money. I coached 2 sports. She waitressed in the summer. I played the piano. I bought a house down on the Cape. I bought an apartment house up in Abington. We did just fine. We didn't have a lot of money. But we worked. I love teaching. I knew I had great insurance. Teachers get upset when I point this out. I went and worked on my master's. I drove into Boston, BU, 3 nights a week. Chose not to finish because I couldn't stand the educational courses. How about this, by the way? There was an article. I've been on the radio for over 20 years down in the Cape. I was on in the mornings every day. Imagine listening to Don McKeag every morning. How outrageous. But we had it very nice. Ed Lambert is doing the show now, does a very good job. But anyway, I read an article one day out of the Wall Street Journal. Never heard a response from the NEA or PTA or the Principals Associations. They did a study, I think it was Princeton. Wish I could find that article. I've tried to look it up. After the study they did, they deemed that just under 50% of all teacher college graduates were incapable of teaching in a classroom. That's teachers college graduates. That's 20 years ago or more. And we wonder why the test score. Now, again, there are wonderful people in schools. There are wonderful teachers. This is not just like there are absolutely wonderful police officers, firemen, anybody. This is not, again, this is about principles, not personalities. This is about those people who aren't doing a good job and they stay there. This is about teachers who stand in front of a classroom and tell them who they think they should vote for. This is about a teachers' union that every one of their Massachusetts magazines, the MTA, has all Democrats in it. I used to fight that when I was a Democrat. I used to speak up. Hard to believe, right, that I would speak up, Kenny? It's not right. Those kids in front of a classroom are kids of Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. They're there to learn. They're there to have a teacher show them the differences between political parties. Same thing in religion. But no. Perfectly okay, because the Democrats were going after the unions, and they got them. They got the bias of unionism. So, I'm babbling about a lot of things, but I'm here to tell you that when you watch these debates, any debates, and when you see Hillary Clinton is the best the Democrats can give you, she's even got women abandoning her campaign in droves. And of all the good men and women that are in the Democratic Party, that's the best they can do. And you know why? You know why we have such a dearth of good candidates? Is because they don't want the crap that they're going to get from the left, who, if you're a conservative, you're going to be hounded. You're going to have to worry about what your wife, if you're a man running for office, you're going to have to worry about what your wife did when she was in junior high school. Imagine how bad it was when George Bush was running the second time, when they found that he got in trouble with drunk driving or something back in college. They had to dig that deep. Well, of course, they couldn't find anything wrong in any of the Democrats. They somehow missed that Bill Clinton went to England or London with the anti-American crowd and burned flags over in London. That was never reported. But they can find it about a Republican, or they can find it about anybody that doesn't conform to socialist practices. The ACLU, nothing but an arm to the left. And, of course, this is why the court system is so flawed. The court system, and this baloney, it's the best there is in the world. It may be flawed, but it is flawed. Getting back to the police officers. Now, these are all facts, ladies and gentlemen. I worked in the jail down in Barnstable for Sheriff Jim Cummings, a wonderful guy. They always go gunning for him because he's a Republican. Anybody that's a Republican on the Cape now, the Cape Cod Times, all of them, they go after anybody that has the temerity to run against a Democrat. But anyway, so I worked down there. I saw a lot of things, but then I heard speeches for the re-elections Jim was talking about. Now, this is truth in this state, and I'm sure it's another. Do you know, Deval Patrick did it too, but for a long time now, Democratic governors, if you look at their budget, by the way, I'm sure you Democrats are happy, you liberals are happy that we allowed the past Democrat, who by law is supposed to have a balanced budget, didn't do it for two times, and walked away from it with no punishment. What good is it? If you got that, you swear an oath, this president swears an oath going against the Constitution, hires a new attorney general, what'd she say? Let me just let you know right now. Now, she's confirmed by the Republicans and by everybody. What's her name? Joey, I forget. Doesn't matter. She's a woman of color, fine. But we're a racist country. You know, we had a black governor, we have a black president, attorney general before was black, fine. She gets sworn in. The first thing she says, I just want you to know that I am not going to follow the immigration laws. We had that Democratic Martha Coakley, Attorney General, the highest legal authority in Massachusetts, the Attorney General. She said, technically, illegal isn't illegal. Not one judge, not one lawyer, not one law firm, not one person that I know of that represents the legal system was outraged and said, hey, wait just a minute. You can't make a statement like that. The word illegal means illegal. I don't care about jargon or how you want to dance around it. And you Democrats tolerate it. That's fine. But now you know why so many lawyers are Democrats. Liberals and the Democratic Party creates more lawsuits. The legal system is the only system that can generate business for itself. They're in their own little cocoon. Look at those politicians. Over 80% of all our politicians are lawyers. Do you think they're going to take on tort liability, for instance, that's been abused for years and years and years? Most people don't know what tort liability is. That's pain and suffering. It jacks up your insurance by millions. But it also jacks up the savings account of your lawyers and the law firms. Nobody wants to talk about one of the biggest reasons that health care is so expensive is lawyers. What's his name, that nummo John Edwards? Ran with our own John Kerry. He put 2 hospitals out of business on questionable baby deaths. But the whole hospital, all those jobs went. I guess some of you out there think, oh, that's fine, huh? So communities, surrounding communities no longer had that hospital. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have tough laws and protection of, but why did they get out of business? Not because they lost the suit, but because of the huge, you must admit, any one of you watches these TV and looks at these settlements. A criminal, for crying out loud, breaks into a package store and the owner has a legal gun and shoots him. The victim, a convicted habitual bum, sues, and the legal system somehow gets the guy $1.8 million who broke into the package store in the first place. I mean, every time I see these feel-good television shows where it's always the legal, the detectives and the cops are always doing wrong. Do you ever notice it? The attitude today in this country. I'm sure there's been mistakes made. Sure there's bad cops. Bad teachers. Get rid of them. Don't blame the whole system. Well, anyway, I was going to say 775.
No, it's 508-830-3971.
Well, that was a long haul, Kenny, after yesterday. I don't know, but I wanted to be able to talk about the book a little bit.
I'm all ready for you, and
okay.
I was just ready to remind you about the book.
And by the way, our telephone calls are slight, and I did hear, and I heard, by the way, I didn't tell you, we had that nice call from Peggy on your show last night. Peggy in Duxbury, I want to thank her. She watches this show too, although she may get it on the rerun. And what she said, which was very complimentary and nice, and hopefully a lot of the truth, is like what I just did now. She said, I don't ever want to call because I don't want to interrupt what you have to say. And when I was first doing the radio shows in the mornings down there, that was my second day. I was working for Ernie Bach Sr. down in Yarmouth, and my second day, I had a co-host, a gal, who had a car accident on her way to work, and I was there by myself. Imagine the second day on the air, and I was by myself, and I had just brought a few notes, figuring I'd just, fill in around her. Now I had to do the whole thing. Well, anyway, as it turned out, I talked about, my father had owned a restaurant down the street, and then I talked about living on the Cape. I was living in Hyannisport, talked about Hyannisport and what it was like to live there with the Kennedys and all this stuff. But I didn't get one call for the first, hour before. And so the advertising came on. I went to the water cooler, and the general manager came down and says, "Gee, John, great job, Donnie." I said, "Are you kidding? I'm laying an egg here. I haven't had one call." And he said, no. He said, "Yes, calls are important." But he said, "Always remember that if you're talking interesting to the audience, they don't want to interrupt." So hopefully that's one of the things we have here.
That's one of the things,
Right.
Donnie.
But anyway, what we're going to do now, because time is short, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, professionally, not personally, was I just finished, which is writing a book. And any of you that are listening, if you've ever done it, you'll know. And I was a school teacher, as I said, an English teacher, and I'm a reader. I like reading, but I never thought writing a book was so difficult. Well, mine was, I think, more difficult because it's a memoir. And it's entitled, "Well, at least I owned a Rolls Royce." And it's about the ups and downs of my life and growing up in Weymouth and spending a lot of time in various sundry places. I made a couple of $1 million over the years and lost it. And, I've fought back and done different things. So it will be on the market, and there is a picture of the cover with my Rolls on the front. I bought the Rolls in Palm Beach, a place called Chuck and Harold's. Any of you that have gone down there, it was a wonderful restaurant. In the pouring rain, in 1959, which was absolutely beautiful, and I had a lot of fun with it, ran into this guy the IRS was chasing him. And so it's a story of, growing up in Massachusetts and spending a lot of time. And I owned a lot of restaurants. I owned the Asa Burris House down in Hyannis, those that hopefully remember. Dave McKenna was my piano player, one of the finest piano players in the world. I owned the Flying Bridge restaurant on Falmouth Harbor, which is now leased to someone, but I owned all the slips and everything. Never should have sold that. And I owned a B&B called the Lamb and Lion on 6A. Owned another place called the Backside Saloon. Was on the radio for 20 years. Was a teacher and coach. Spent time up in North Conway, New Hampshire, skiing and playing piano. So it's a story about ups and downs of life, I guess. So I'd like to think that some of you might find it interesting. And by the way, I'm going to give out a number here, 508-524-2589. I'll repeat it, 508-524-2589, and you can order that on the radio, or we've just now gotten the books. And so it will be on Amazon in another week or so. And I am going to be having a book launching at Baxter's, where I played the piano. I was the first piano player, anybody that's gone to Baxter's. And then I'm hoping to have other book signings. I know I'm going to have one at the Plymouth Library, and I'm going to speak to my friends at East Bay, Paul and the crew, who said they'd love to have it. So keep that in mind, and I'll be reminding you of it on the show. Cost me a lot mentally, physically, and financially. And unlike the government employees that I'm chastised, I have a bottom line. So I'm hoping that you will find interest in reading my book. It sells for $13.95, and I'm kind of proud of it, but it's very difficult. I grew up in the age, unlike today, which just saddens me, to see how young people behave and talk on television without any thought to their parents or their grandparents. But I was brought up with it where we had the saying, the Irish especially, you don't air your dirty laundry. In other words, you never talk about your family. Or, well, it made it very uncomfortable because I am Irish and I pick up guilt like lint. That comes with Irish Catholic also. And so I had the whole thing, but I'm proud of it. I hope I've done a good job. It's taken me over 2 years. And I want to thank you all, too, for listening. I do hear from some loyal people. And Kenny, I've been going strong tonight. I didn't know if we have a couple of minutes. Did you have anything you wanted to add to the...
When you started talking about Dukakis, all I could think about was the tank. And I think that has become his signature. The only thing I want to say is that in what news reports I heard this morning, they were bashing Trump for his faces.
But that's nothing new.
For the faces he made.
Yeah, right.
He wouldn't apologize.
Yep.
He wouldn't do this. He wouldn't do that. I was yawning.
Oh, it's
honestly.
boring.
I was yawning. I watched about 15 minutes
That's
of it,
me.
and I just couldn't
stand
take
it
anymore.
I couldn't stand it either.
But they're promising that we're going to be having more of that in a few more weeks. I guess they're hoping that the crowds will thin out. I don't know as they're going to thin out.
What do you mean? Who's hoping?
The candidates. The
oh,
press.
yeah.
The
Well,
press
that
is
should
hoping.
happen anyway. But, I'm glad you gave me a chance not to interrupt, but I'm interrupting, as you know, I do very well.
Well, that's your right.
CNN, that debate last night, and the reason I bring this up, 22.2 million people, the largest single event ever watched. Ever. I don't know. I'm sure the Super Bowl must. I don't. Maybe not. But this is why I went on my diatribe, Kenny, and you people that are still watching. That's how fed up the country is. I guarantee that audience consisted of all political parties, all races, all religions, all sexes. People are fed up. They're fed up with what liberal control has done in terms of illegals who don't belong here, and they continue to forget that illegal means illegal, and they are fed up with people who don't deserve something for nothing continuing to get it. I went to UMass, and I've mentioned this. I have friends whose kids or grandkids now can't get into the University of Massachusetts, and they're residents. Their grandparents have been residents, and yet some foreigner can come in and get into the University of Massachusetts, and not because they have better grades, but because it's political correctness by the elite that run colleges. God bless you. I really do like to laugh, and I like to be light, but this is serious business. It's war. And before I leave this planet, I want to know that at least I tried, and I hope some of you will do the same, even just within your own family. Good night. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks so much for watching. Night now.